We're talking Washington Huskies today on Sharpen the Point. 2024, they were 6-7. We knew year one post DeBoer and in the Big Ten would be tough with the turnover they had, but Fish performed up to expectations, if not better than was expected. Fish is entering year two now. He's got offensive coordinator Jimmy Doherty in his first season. He was promoted from quarterback, pass game coordinator. It's still going to be Fish calling the plays, so there's really not much change here. Defensive coordinator-wise, though, Steve Belichick moves on to be with his dad, and they brought in Ryan Walters, who was the Purdue head coach. One heck of a good defensive coordinator. He should be much more aggressive with his scheme and wreak a little bit more havoc than Belichick sit back playing red zone roulette. Quarterback-wise, Will Rogers, he was who we expected him to be last year, right? A steady veteran presence who would give you the opportunity to win games you should and teach the young gun along the way. He makes way now for DeMond Williams' era to officially begin. Williams had design packages and a limited role for much of his freshman year before being thrown into the fire the last game of the year against Oregon. He performed well from a passing standpoint, completing 17 of 20 passes with no interceptions, but ultimately it was the 10 sacks that really cost him a decent outlook. The bowl game against Louisville got everyone excited for what could come, though, as he threw for 374 yards and 4 touchdowns while adding 48 yards rushing and 1 touchdown on the ground. Williams has a massive ceiling as a dual-threat quarterback under Fish, but he needs to avoid taking hits due to his slight frame so that he can remain on the field. If he goes down, then so does this team because there is nothing to speak of behind him. His biggest area of necessary improvement is obviously his pocket awareness and holding the ball too long, as fewer sacks taken is only going to help him. But everything looks to be there for him to be a potentially Heisman candidate in the future. And if you watch the long shot Heisman odds video I did, he is on it and he is featured heavily. Running back wise, Jonah Coleman followed Fish over from Arizona, and he had one heck of a season with over 1,200 all-purpose yards, 10 touchdowns. He's a perfect fit for this offense as a talented runner with good pass-catching ability. I expect him to be more efficient on the ground now that he has such a dynamic weapon and Williams next to him that defenses need to account for. Coleman is likely the bell cow here, and I don't expect him to leave the field very often, but when he does, it should be Adam Muhammad who enters the lineup as the primary backup. Muhammad got his feet wet as a freshman last year, and he looked the part as a big physical back capable of handling a heavy workload in the future, and he's probably the future of the room once Coleman moves on. Pass catching wise, the trio of Giles Jackson, Denzel Boston, and Jeremiah Hunter, they performed as expected overall, with Jackson being a positive surprise, showing great rapport with Williams, and Hunter ultimately a disappointment on the year. Both now leave, and it's Boston who should have the opportunity to emerge as a star. I expect him to use that 6'4" frame to be the go-to target for Williams like Tet was for Noah Fafita in this offense, clearing 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns while working the intermediate areas of the field. He didn't participate in full contact during the spring due to off-season surgery, but he should be fine for fall camp. They did add Amari Evans from Penn State, who likely has the leg up on a starting role, but he's really never emerged as a go-to target or a target earner in his career, and I don't think he's going to do that here either. Expectations should be low there. Returners Kevin Green and Rashid Williams are certainly going to have roles as well. Green was out last season due to an injury, and he should man the slot where Jackson had so much success last year. Rashid Williams, for me, is the name to watch, though, as somebody who could take a big step, and he could really kick Evans to the curb in this offense. I expect him to take that leap and be someone we're highly interested in as far as catching passes from DeMond Williams from a DFS standpoint for years to come. At tight end, Kaleki Latu, he was a perfect fit as a good blocker who was useful in the passing game. With him moving on, they're now going to turn to Decker DeGraff. He played a role as a freshman, catching 3 touchdowns on limited snaps. He very well could be an upgrade on Latu overall, but he's not going to be extremely relied upon in this offense. Offensive line-wise, the line arguably saw the biggest drop-off in production from the 2023 season to the 2024 season, as what was the Joe Moore Award-winning group struggled with depth issues, injuries, and coming together as a unit. What happened last season could end up really being a blessing in disguise as young talent was forced into action at times, giving them valuable experience heading into this year. There's a ton of questions here still, though, but I would say it's a positive this year that those are their questions, because that means that they have competition for a bunch of spots, which that means now that the depth is getting better should injuries strike again. Carver Willis, he comes over from Kansas State. He's almost assuredly going to have a spot as a starting tackle. I would project him to be the left tackle, but he has good experience having started the last couple of years at right tackle for Kansas State. At right tackle, I would say Drew Azzopardi returns after starting every game there last season. That's why I'm projecting Willis to go to left tackle. He wasn't great for the whole year, but they could look to upgrade, but he was consistent. They kind of knew what they were getting at him, and he has potential, so he should be the first in line. Up the middle, I'd expect the Hatchett brothers to man two of the spots with Landon at center and his brother Gearin, who comes back from Oklahoma, at guard. And then last spot is really a true competition for me. Pocky Finau and Zach Henning being the leading candidates. They're both quality guards, so that'll be good to have either one of them on the field. Defensive line-wise, the top three from a year ago all graduate, but they did bring in some high upside guys from the portal to cover those losses and could end up really being in better shape. The additions of Simode Pepa from Utah, Ontario Thompson from Western Michigan, and Uyungale from Arizona have good experience and they can make an impact right away. Returners Javon Parker, he's coming off an Achilles tear, and Elenius Davis, they're also going to be big factors in this rotation. Davis is someone to watch as he played well in limited snaps last season, and he's really growing into a force along this line. There's a lot of versatility among this group, which should help them to be much more effective up front, stopping the run. Linebacker-wise, there are virtually no snaps returning from last year's unit, but once then, they did a really nice job of backfilling of those losses. Carson Bruner and Alfonso Tuputuala, they're going to be tougher to replace than the guys up front, but the pieces are here to do so. Getting Zach Durfee back healthy is going to be a big catalyst to this pass rush, and Russell Davis should be his counterpart off the edge, forming a nice duo. Durfee's a big physical player who is a breakout candidate that could push for a double-digit sack season if things break right for him. The inside linebacker spot should be manned by some high upside, experienced transfers in Buda El Ukdwa from Washington State. He went from one side of the rivalry to the other, and Ziri Alexander, who comes over from UCF. And then we have Jacob Manu from Arizona. Manu was a team captain for Fish at Arizona and very productive prior to tearing his ACL last October. I think because he has the option to be able to redshirt coming off of that ACL later in the season, it's on the table that he does not play if he's not ready for the start of the season. So I think he sits out a year and then comes back and is the top dog, leader of the defense next season, the year after in 2026. In the secondary, turnover's a theme here. They need to replace 4 key contributors from a good unit last year. Cornerback Thaddeus Davis went to North Carolina with Belichick. Safety Cameron Fabicolanen, he was very good playing deep, but he graduates. The transfer portal is again going to be utilized to replenish the depleted unit here. Alex McLaughlin from Northern Arizona, Takario Davis from Arizona, who Fish had recruited previously, and CJ Christian from Florida International. They're going to be relied upon to help replace those losses. And then returners Ephesian Pricesock, Mikel Esteen, and Dyson McCutcheon. They're going to factor in as well. The combination of Pricesock and Davis at corner is extremely intriguing to me, as their length is just unmatched, with both standing at 6'4", providing a serious presence on the outside. Looking at the schedule and outlook, the offensive line was a huge weakness last season, but they should be improved there. Combining that with the explosive weapons at the skill positions, we should really expect this offense to take a big leap here in year 2 under Jed Fish. The defense should be improved as well, creating more negative plays and limiting the run game instead of trying to play that red zone roulette that Belichick relied upon. I'd not count on Manu playing, and he's going to preserve his last year of eligibility. Combining a havoc-creating defense with this explosive offense would make them a tough out every week in this conference. Schedule-wise, Colorado State, that's a win. UC Davis, win. At Washington State, rivalry game. We know it's always tricky. You never know there, but these two programs are going in different directions, so that's a win. Ohio State at home. That is the first test of the year. I think it's a loss. I think Ohio State's just still too strong for this team to take down, but they're going to shock somebody this year. At Maryland, I don't love that road trip, but I'm going to say win because I think Maryland's bad. Rutgers win at Michigan. They can win this game if they perform up to up to and above maybe most expectations. My expectation personally, they can win that game, but I would lean loss because Michigan still returns a ton on defense. Enough. They're deep. Illinois, they're live to win that game, specifically at home. I would lean loss. Illinois returns a good bit, and they're a stout team. At Wisconsin, win. Purdue, win. At UCLA, win. And then finishing out with Oregon at home. I would project that to be a loss, but they have been able to beat up on Oregon, when the two teams have played, but different players at that point. Expectations are growing for this team, and they should, as they have done a nice job of talent acquisition on the recruiting trail specifically and bringing in transfers. Chief among them is Damon Williams, and he has a massive ceiling that other teams cannot boast in the conference. He's the face of the franchise here. So long as Williams stays on the field and upright and healthy, this team is a dark horse to beat anyone any given week. 7 or 8 wins feels like the floor here with plenty of upside for more if things break right. Everything in 2025, though, is really just building for a big-time year in 2026.